I feel great. We got the right guys. We got guys that want to compete. We got guys that want to come out there and they want to. The great teams and great players in all history of sports, usually they want to practice hard and they want that competition.
That was awesome. That was outstanding. We appreciate our fans so much, and that's why we work so hard. And because they deserve to have a really good season and to really have a sustained winner. So that was awesome.
Welcome back, Falcons fans. It's your boy Bryce Lewis back at it again for another Atlanta Falcons video. Yes, sir, we are in training camp season. The season is right around the corner. We're just about to start preseason in just another week. We have the Hall of Fame game earlier this week, but the Falcons are in camp grinding, sharpening iron, trying to get themselves ready to potentially have a playoff run this year, trying to take the next step under Arthur Smith in his third year. And I'm going to give you all the feedback today on the Falcons and things I've seen and heard through training camp and everything. You'll see a lot of footage in this show and everything like that. Want to give a shout out to Kevin Knight. Some of the videos you'll see in this video is from him. He's done a great job covering the team at training camp. Also, don't forget, subscribe to him on his YouTube page, The Falcoholic Live. Again, great shows, great coverage. I watch some of his stuff. Great guy. He's been on the show before, actually, here. So definitely go over to his channel, go over to his Twitter, give him a follow, give him some love, say Bryce sent you, everything like that. So good job for him. Also, shout out to Daniel Flick. He's also been covering the Falcons. He went to training camp this past week, so some of the stuff you might see from him. And also Say Which Way. I don't want to say his name. I think it's Adnan. I might be completely wrong. He's also great coverage. Follow him on Twitter at Say Which Way. So let's go ahead and dive into it, guys. We're going to go ahead and just get into the most controversial person that y'all been talking about since he's been named the starter, Desmond Ridder. QB1. Listen. Desmond, again, first training camp as a starter. How has he done? Early, he struggled. There were reports, there were people saying he was struggling. He had to get, adjusted. Struggling, especially with the deep ball. That's been something that's been an issue for him the last, for most of his career as a football player. It's just his deep ball accuracy has been kind of spotty at times. It's been spotty in training camp. He had a couple of mini camps and OTAs, but now, in training camp is another level of intensity that has ramped up. And, he's been struggling with that. He hasn't taken a lot of deep shots, too. I know Arthur Smith has been wanting him to take a lot of deep shots, but there's still been a lot of reports coming out of camp that he hasn't. I mean, when it comes to short intermediate, he's been great. He's been fantastic. He's been eating people alive with that. I've seen a couple of fade routes. He's done really well with those. When you win those fades to the end zone with a couple of guys. So it seems like things that maybe involve some touch, like those types of routes, or even just short and intermediate, he's been killing that. So he's been doing that. The biggest thing is that he has to be able to throw the ball deep. Clearly, Arthur Smith knows. We're going to have an elite rushing attack. People are going to maybe put 8 in the box for us. We got to be able to tackle over the top. And so he's going to need Desmond to have more trust in that deep ball and be able to hit that deep ball to be able to be effective as an offense. That will be his next step. If he wants to take that next step as a starter, it's just being able to threaten the defense in all ways. Yes, Desmond does not have the greatest arm strength in the world, but it's good enough. And so he has to be able to, like I said, hit those throws if they're there. We've seen some overthrows. We've seen some underthrows, and things like that. And sometimes those guys have really good coverage, and that happens. It's just part of the game. Like I said, iron is sharpening iron in training camp, and Desmond's going through it. But realistically, from that, I want to say it was the third day, I think, in camp, or the fourth day in camp, he's pretty much been solid. You've heard a lot of positive reports about his play. You've heard a lot that he has, really just continued to improve each day. He's been sharp. And honestly, if you're hearing that from your QB1, that's what you want. You know what he needs to work on, and I'm sure he's going to work on it. Like, listen, there's been drills they have been doing in training camp. They've been doing drills where they'll have a coach just stand in the middle of where a wide receiver is, and you have to get it over the coach while his hand is up to get it to the wide receiver. Practice, good arch on a throw to be able to get it over your defender, but get it to the wide receiver. They're doing all types of drills to maybe work on that and help with that. Obviously, because it's things you don't think about. It's things that you don't think like impact the player, but maybe those drills can help a guy get better at making that type of throw. So, I think that's been big for him and his development and continuing to move forward. So, for Desmond, I think he just has to continue to play sharp. We'll see how he does. I'll be interested to see how he does against the Miami defense coming up. That's the first game the Falcons play coming up this next Friday at 7 p.m. So I'll be interested in the scrimmages, how he performs against another defense that's not the Falcons. Does he make plays? What those plays look like and things like that. So I'm excited to see how Desmond does there. Like I said, I've said this last year and I'm saying it this year. Development ain't cute. This team believes in development. You heard it at the beginning of this video. You got guys ready to compete, ready to play, and ready to have fun. So Desmond is a guy who, if you see progress throughout the preseason, you're going to feel good going into the regular season as they go into week 1 against Bryce Young and the Carolina Panthers. So we'll have to see what happens, but we'll keep up with Desmond's progress. But there's some good things that you could definitely take away from his camp so far. There's some good plays that you can take away from his camp so far, but there are also things that he needs to work on. And that's just typical of a guy who still has a lot of development to go for a player such as himself. And I also want to talk about Tyler Heinicke. He's had a pretty solid camp as well. People have mentioned, is there a chance that he may win the job? There's no job competition. Blank has came out and said Desmond's the QB1. Arthur said he's the QB1. He's going to be the guy to start week 1. The reason why Heinicke was brought in is just in case Desmond Ridder is actually terrible. You have a very capable backup quarterback who can start in this league, has won games in this league, has started playoff games in this league, a guy who is capable of still keeping you competitive. Like, it's not like Heinicke's a drop-off from Ridder. You know what I'm saying? And depending on who you are, you might think Heinicke's better than Ridder. That's you. But that's why you bring in a quarterback of his caliber, because you want a guy where if something happens with Ridder, we still have a very capable QB2 who could pretty much still also take us there before you get into Logan Woodside. So, I think Heinicke, you've seen some pretty throws he's made. He's made some great throws. I remember that one throw I think he made to Jonnu Smith over the middle. Great, accurate throw. He's played really well in camp, and I think that's obviously just great, just knowing that your backup quarterback is playing that well at that level and can give you some security about, okay, if that something happens with Desmond doesn't work out, we have a very capable quarterback who can come in and still play well for this team. So that's big for that. So overall, quarterbacks, even Logan's had some good throws as QB3. QBs have not really been terrible in camp. They've been solid. They haven't been spectacular, but they haven't been bad. They've just been solid, and that's okay. Like I said, we'll see how they look when they start to go against other competition outside of their own guys in the coming week. So now let's get to the running backs. Bijan obviously has been the story of camp. We've seen trending videos of Bijan Robinson, especially making catches. One video of Troy Anderson, crossing Troy Anderson up on a route, really beating him bad. The hype is real. Bijan, you expect him to be dynamic, and that's what I think the Falcons expect him to be as well. A dynamic player who's going to go out there and just be a huge mismatch issue for any defense. You feel like you can't put a linebacker on him, but then it's like, do you really want to sacrifice one of your secondary players to put on him? Because then you got other guys like Drake London and Kyle Pitts who can beat you, and you want to have your best guys on them, but Bijan may be as good as them as a receiver, and so it's like, we get that's a mismatch. Because one thing I think about what the Falcons want to do this year, and this is why I think Desmond maybe do well, is that I think this is going to be a mismatch offense. This isn't going to be we just need you just to light them up. This is listen, we're going to give you mismatches with Pitts and London and Mack and Bijan and Cordero, and we just need you to be able to find those mismatches and exploit them. If you can do that, Desmond will be completely fine. And Bijan's a big part of that because he's going to be using the receiving game a lot, and obviously he'll be using the running game a lot. I've said this, that I think because they're going to use him a lot as a receiver, I wouldn't be surprised if Algier and Bijan might have close. I ain't going to say they have the same amount of carries, but they may not be as far apart as some people think in carries, because Tyler Algier, even though he's improved his receiving, is going to be more of, I think, the pounding, bruising running back, so I expect him to still get 10 to 15 carries a game. And Bijan, since you're going to use him all over the place, he may only get 10 carries, 12 carries a game, but also maybe get 4, 5, 6 catches. That may be how they use them. So obviously, I don't know till we actually get into the games, but that may be something that could go down because, like I said, Algier is the more physical running back, and then obviously Cordero, if you want to give him some reps as a running back too, because a lot of people are wondering, are the Falcons just going to use him primarily more as a wide receiver this year, or is he still going to have his hand in the running game as much? Especially because he's a little bit older, he has some injuries, maybe you don't know where the wear and tear is on his body, so you don't want to rush him too much. You probably prefer more in passing route situations and take advantage of mismatches, just like you would do with Bijan. But Bijan's been absolutely fantastic. He's been great. He has been what you have expected of him at the 8th pick, and he could be a guy who definitely could be in Atlanta for a long time, even after his first contract. I know running backs are going through a weird period right now of contract talks, but he could be a guy who could reset that market for them potentially because of his dynamicness. And so that's going to be something that I think is going to be really interesting to keep an eye on, and seeing how he continues to grow as this camp goes on and as we get into the season. Like I said, Algier's been pretty solid. work on the receiving game. He's been pretty good. Not really much to say there. I expect Algier to be the Algier we saw at the end of last year. I expect him to play as well as he played last year. I expect him to be as good as he was last year and continue to, like I said, grow and just improve on last year's success that he had at the end of the season. And then Cordarrelle Patterson, like I just mentioned, it'll be interesting to see how he is used. Is he going to be used as a receiver? Is he going to be used as a running back? Remember, he's a veteran now, so he's taking some veteran rest days in camp. Yeah, it's like I said, you don't want to put that wear and tear on Cordarrelle Patterson. But again, very exciting to see what this running back group looks like. And also, Caleb Huntley was waived, was put on the, unable to perform list. Or I think it was, I don't know if PUP or just unable to, well, actually it might be the same thing. But perform list. And so Carlos Washington Jr. has been a guy who has played really well. I've heard some good things from him out at camp. He has a great opportunity. I mean, listen, the Falcons may not keep more than 3 running backs, but this may be just a strong opportunity for Carlos to be like that next guy up if he's on practice squad, to be like, okay, we trust him, and he could potentially be the guy to step in if that happens, if we need him to step in to play. He's played really well. I mean, the Falcons, and you'll see me mention this a few times in the play. They have some undrafted free agents again this year that are making some plays and doing some good things and making an impression on coaches and people who have been keeping up with training camp. And I think he's one of those guys to keep an eye on. He's taking advantage of the opportunity he's been given, and I'm excited to see how he plays as we get into preseason as well. Then we get to the receivers. Obviously, Drake London, you know what he is. He's a stud. He's going to be wide receiver 1. Mac Hollins, we know he's been controversial outside of the field. Peanut water, M&M water. Listen, I can't condone that, but I support the man. Him as the person. I don't support his actions. The spaghetti you eating with your hands. I mean, hey, listen, man. Say, hey, bro, you do what you do, man. Like I said, man. Hey, but he's been solid. Mac, Mac was solid in Las Vegas last year. He was one of David Carr's favorite targets last year. He was solid. He was a former captain in Miami. He low-key was one of Tua's, even though he didn't get a lot of catches in terms of value. When I would watch Miami Dolphins games, because my dad's a Miami Dolphins fan, I feel like I would hear Mac Hollins' name. He's a guy who don't stand out to you, but he's a big target. And a guy who obviously, he was a former captain in Miami, so he's a leader. He's a guy who I listen, don't sleep on him, man. He kind of reminds me of Mohamed Sanu. A lot of people when we signed Sanu was like, he's a wide receiver 3. We're expecting him to be wide receiver 2. What are we doing? And then he ended up working out perfectly. I'm not saying that he'll be exactly like Sanu, but Hollins is going to be good this year. He's made some plays in camp so far that I think should make you be optimistic about him moving into the season. I haven't heard a lot about Scotty Miller. I feel like when I see a lot of videos, I don't see a lot of Scotty Miller. I mean, I feel like I've just seen some recently, but I really didn't see something the first few days. And I'm just like, is Scotty out there? I mean, but as far as I know, they getting hurt. Maybe he just ain't doing anything crazy. I mean, that's fine. I mean, not every player has to do something spectacular to be good. So, I mean, listen, when he does play or when I do see something, he looks fast. Scotty's a super fast player. He's definitely a guy I could see Arthur Smith describing as a guy who you give it to him in 6-7 yards, you got him some space, he can take it. And honestly, that's the type of playmaking ability, that yards after catch that you would want from a guy. So overall, for me, Scotty Miller, man, great stuff, man. And then I think Cordell Hodge, I think will be wide receiver 4 this year. I think he will be that guy. But wide receiver 5 on the Falcons is a very competitive spot. Frank Darby has had a really good camp so far. Frank has been someone that Falcons fans have been disappointed in the last couple of years. Feels like he hasn't done a lot. He's known for the energy and having fun and just all of it. But then it's like he hasn't done anything on the field. So it's like, all right, you ain't really providing much value to the team outside of that. In camp, he's made some good catches. He's played well. Arthur Smith came out and said that Frank Darby has had a strong camp. He is very much in play for that wide receiver 5. He may be wide receiver 5 this year, but he has some stiff competition. Xavier Malone, the undrafted rookie, he's played well. Speedster, short guy, but speedy. He's made some big plays. He's made some catches. He's played well. He's a guy that you can't just rule out. Slade Bolden, he's had a good camp. He's a guy who could potentially get that wide receiver 5 spot. He's another name that could be in it. And also Josh Ali, a guy who has kind of hung around the team for the last year. Hasn't done a lot in terms of maybe name value to people, but I've seen a lot of videos from him. there's a lot of competition at that wide receiver 5 spot. And listen, I know that Arthur Smith said he expects a lot about Cordell Hodge this year. I mean, if those 4 other guys, if 2 of them play really, really well, I mean, Hodge is just on a 1-year deal. Maybe you consider, cutting Hodge and keeping 2 of them, like maybe Darby and Malone, if that's what it ends up being. I mean, because you would expect one of them to make practice squad too. I mean, there's been a lot of good competition there, so I'm excited to keep up with their progress going in again against Miami this week and going into the preseason game and just seeing, because preseason game 1, you're going to see a lot of those guys getting a lot of reps. So I'm really interested to see how they play together when it starts. Like they're like those guys have been showing out at that position. So I've been really, really happy about what I've seen from them. Tight ends. I mean, Kyle Pitts has just got back from like really ramping it up from his injury this training camp. Was starting a little slow, getting back into the pace of things, trying to develop chemistry with Desmond. He's done recently well in training camp that I've seen. He's done pretty well. You expect him to be a big part of this offense. You expect. Listen, that's one thing I said. Desmond likes his tight end. Desmond gonna use his tight end. So Kyle Pitts is gonna get thrown the ball. I truly believe that, because Desmond definitely is a guy who will look at the tight end security blanket, and Kyle Pitts is a heck of a security blanket. So I expect Kyle Pitts to be, when he gets himself back in the full, football shape and is able to get himself ready to go, I expect him to be fully able to, be Kyle Pitts that we expect him to be. And I think Desmond and him are going to continue to work on that connection to be good. Gianno Smith currently has had an injury recently, so he hasn't been playing or hasn't been in camp practice a lot recently. But when he played early, he played well. I expect him to be able to take advantage of all that attention going away from Kyle Pitts and them. That's why I made a mention. I said Gianno really has a great opportunity to really be a breakout guy. And the thing is, it's not even like I don't even think in the stats you're going to see it like that. I think you're going to see it a lot in just, don't be surprised. Okay, Pitts, London, who he's going to go to, and then it's Smith. Don't be surprised, red zone, who he's going to go to, it's Smith. Don't be surprised in key moments, Gianno Smith's the player who makes a big play. I'm just saying, don't be shocked. He has the capability of definitely being that. Guys like John Fitzpatrick and them, and Parker, Hesse. He's, those guys are battling for tight end 3. Both have a great opportunity. Both have their own strengths and weaknesses. I think Fitzpatrick is more of a receiving tight end a little bit. Hesse is more of a blocker. Just kind of depends on what Arthur Smith really wants from that spot. Let's get into the O-line. There's not really much to say. You pretty much know Matthews, Lindstrom, and McGarry are your starters. Center-wise, you would assume it's Drew Gallman. But really the biggest competition on that line is left guard. And Matt Hennessy was the guy who started training camp as the first team guard. Now he's been hurt, so Matthew Bergeron has came in there, and he's played well as far as I've seen. He's had a good camp. He has to develop a little bit faster, especially if he may be the day one starter, but people think at this point he'll probably just be the guy at this point. Arthur Smith has came out and said that Matt Hennessy still has an opportunity when he gets back from injury to get that job, but to me, this is a great opportunity for Matthew to kind of just take advantage and just kind of just be able to really get a hold of that position and be able to, really take a hold of it and become the starting left guard. And I think everybody, when they drafted him, he was a very high regarded guard prospect coming out. And so people think that he realistically could be a plug and start player in this league. So it'll be interesting to see if he actually is the guy. We'll obviously keep up with Matt and see when he can get back and, see how that goes. But overall, offensive line, you pretty much know what it's going to be. They're expecting to build off of last year. People feel like the Falcons have a top 10 offensive line in the league. You obviously, expect the running game to be great. They've struggled against the defensive line in practice, but we're about to get into the D line in a minute. So there's a lot of talent on that side of the ball. So it's understandable. But overall, I think offensive line should be solid. That would be the one thing that would probably be more surprising is if the offensive line took regress this coming season. So be interested to see the continued progress of the line. So that's something to keep an eye on. So let's get into the defensive side of the ball. Defensive line. Listen, Eddie Goldman retired, so he was a guy a lot of people were excited about. All right, he retired. Or he's back on the list where he's not going to play for the guys. They signed a guy, I can't remember his name right off the bat, from the Giants to fill that spot. Big guy, by the way, because they clearly want a big body. But they still have Grady Jarrett, who for some reason has been referred to on multiple media occasions as Grady Jackson. Don't know why, but and people are like, Grady's still playing? Dang. But nah, it's Grady Jarrett. Obviously, we expect him to be a stud. He said that David Amimata, he's going to be great for him. I mean, Grady said it. I mean, playing with him inside is going to be really, really good. I think they're going to play David mainly inside with Grady, and I think that's going to be good for them in terms of a combo because David has some pass rush ability, but is also a big body who can penetrate the defense and really be able to create some havoc with Grady up there. That's something that we feel like Grady hasn't had during his time here, is that second guy next to him who can just create havoc. And now they're helping that they have some really good strong players who can do that. And you still got Timmy Horn. He was an undrafted guy who made the team, played a lot of snaps. He's grown this training camp. I expect him to fully be a part of that rotation and be a part of it. You still got guys like Tyquan Graham who can play inside, outside. I feel like he may play more potential inside technique. Potentially, again, they're going to do 3-4-4-3. He could play all multiple spots. But I expect him to continue to get better. He's a good guy on the D-line. And then you get to defensive ends, and the biggest defensive end who's made the biggest name for himself isn't Arnold. It's not D'Angelo. It's not Bud. It's Zach Harrison. Zach Harrison has had some, especially in one-on-ones, and then just some of the training camp reports I've seen, getting would-be sacks on guys. Like, Zach was a guy that when we drafted him, people were like, okay, people say he didn't reach his potential at Ohio State. So does that mean he's a big project developmental pass rusher? He has like physical intangibles. He has that, but what is he going to be in the next level? Can the Falcons get the most out of him? And so far, he has been great in camp. I mean, he has a couple of one-on-one reps, like dominating. He continues to play like that, especially going into like scrimmages and preseason, man. Zach Harrison, man, he may see the field more than maybe what some people maybe have projected. I mean, I don't know what the coaching staff projected, but he may be that's ideal if you got a pass rusher who comes out of the blue and plays well. That gives you another guy you can throw at the quarterback. So, Zach Harrison's been great, man. Like, if he ends up being a big contributor for this team this year, that's the perfect scenario you could ever hope for as a Falcons fan, especially with an offensive line that is expected to improve a lot. They expected the upgrades to make them a much better D-line. That would be big, just to get another guy that you drafted to play well. Obviously, Bud's going to be probably the leader of those guys up there, the pass rush game. Obviously, they'll probably use Caden Ellis sometimes as a pass rusher. Linebacker, just depends on whatever they want to use him as in whatever scheme. But, overall, I actually have high hopes for the pass rushers. I think D'Angelo can take another step. I think Arnold can take another step. I think Bud's a good guy. He's a solid player. Like I said, Zach plays well. He could do something. I really think that this D-line is going to shock some people this year. Like, I think that if they continue to play the way they've played and continue to progress, especially in the run. One thing that, like I said, in camp they've done is they've really kind of stopped the running game for the Falcons. And that's honestly big because, like I said, last year, this defensive line would get wore down and then you could run the football on them and it was just tough. So they clearly said, we want to be able to run the ball on you, but we don't want you to be able to run the ball on us. And so clearly that the additions they made are part of it. And I forgot to even mention Calais Campbell. He's another guy who can play inside technique. They have bodies. That's what you want from your defensive line. You just want to have bodies. You able to get after those guys, man, that'd be great. So I actually have some good expectations for the defensive line. Defensive line may be better than a lot of people expect so far through camp. Like I said, I've seen some good things from what they've done and just how, and just continuing to grow on that. I think they really buy into Ryan Nielsen and what he's preaching. You remember Saints players were disappointed and sad when he left because he was a big part of a lot of the guys that have caused havoc for the Falcons on the defensive side of the ball for the Saints. He's been a part of that development for those guys. Now he's here in Atlanta also doing the same thing. So really, really exciting to see how Nielsen can get the most out of those guys up front. Because if he can, this defensive line can maybe be a little bit better than what some people expect. Then we get to the linebackers. You've seen Troy Anderson primarily. He's been in a couple of videos getting, Bijan's got him a few times. Obviously, Bijan's could be one of the best receiving running backs in the league this year. So that's not necessarily a crazy thing or crazy thought, but I mean, he could be, one of the best. And I think it'll help him in the long run. I think it'll help Troy in the long run to go against guys like Bijan and Cordell Patterson and just, get those reps. Every rep is a chance to learn. Every rep is a chance to get better. Every rep is a chance to figure out what can I do better to better defend this. Looking at the film, things like that. Troy Anderson is a guy who I think will have a lot of potential. Think he has a lot of potential to be like a really, really good linebacker. He runs 4.4 coming out of Montana. We knew when we drafted him, he was a very raw prospect. But a guy who, like, legitimately, like, he could be, like, really, really good. And so I'm really interested to see how Nielsen uses him this year, because you can use him in different ways. Coverage, blitzer, I think he could be just good in all facets of being a linebacker. It's just him just getting developed to that point where he can reach the potential that people have for him. And then Caden Ellis, I mean, he was very solid with the Saints. I mean, I expect him to be solid here, getting after the guy, sometimes in coverage, and just overall as a linebacker. They've been using a lot of 2 linebacker sets, so I wouldn't be surprised to do a lot of 4, maybe a lot of 4-2-5, or maybe even 3-2-6, like those different defensive schemes. I wouldn't be surprised if they do. They have a base 4-3 package who their middle linebacker is Mikal. I know people were wondering going into this offseason, was Mikal potentially on the training camp cut list? I think since he's the guy at that position, unless they sign another guy back, I mean, I just don't see them letting go of Mikal. And Mikal even mentioned it in an interview with Scott Blair and Torrey. He thinks that this Nielsen scheme is ideal for him. He thinks that the Nielsen scheme is going to help bring out the best in him. So if that's true, then I look forward to seeing that. Like, 'cause listen, sometimes scheme is what sometimes can not hold a player back just because it's just what his skills are don't fit what the scheme has. And if you can find players who fit what your scheme asks, you're more likely to get the most out of your players. So he's a guy who I expect to make the roster. And like when I said, when he's base 4-3, you'll probably see him in the rotation, but they probably will use a lot of 2 linebacker with Caden and Troy Anderson when it's all said and done. So I'm looking forward to seeing just Troy continue to have a strong camp and Caden continue to have a strong camp. Now let's get into the secondary. Obviously, we had a scare. Jeff Okudah went down, had to be taken out on the cart. Players gathering around, everything. Just got some good news for actually hopping on this. Arthur Smith said Okudah could be back by week 1. So that's great news. It's not a serious injury. It looks like he'll just probably miss the rest of preseason. And then they'll reevaluate him. Now, obviously, people worry because, oh man, who's going to be that second quarter besides AJ? AJ solid. We know AJ. AJ going to do his thing. AJ has been more aggressive. I think Jerry Gray has been a great revelation for these corners. I think he's taught to be more aggressive, use their hands, help them be better corners. The one thing, even with Jeff Okudah's injury, the Falcons have is depth. They have Clark Phillips. They have Trey Flowers. They have Mike Hughes. They have, I know people are different about him, but Cordell Armstrong. They have the offer. They have Darren Hall. They have bodies. They have guys. Last year, primarily Darren Hall and Cornell Armstrong were your outside corners. When Terrell went down or Casey Hayward went down, but they have bodies. And this is a great opportunity for guys like D and Mike and, whoever they want to put out there to get those reps, to get that extra, build reps with the first team and really sharpen them. Some people maybe think even Clark Phillips, obviously the biggest thing with Clark is he's just a small player. So that's why people feel like he's better as a slot nickel corner. But overall, they have bodies, they have talent. Okudah gets back. He probably has the highest ceiling out of them outside of AJ to be a really solid corner. I think Okudah has really brought a vibrantness to the secondary. You can tell he seems happy. He seems ready to go. He seems locked in. He's a very competitive corner. He's a guy who's not going to make things easy for guys. And that's really what you want from your number 2 corner, man, because they're going to attack him because, I think AJ is going to get back to where he was, maybe not exactly where he was 2 years ago, but close to that, where he'll establish himself truly as a shutdown number 1 corner. And so they're going to go after Okudah. So if Okudah can really get where people thought he could have been coming out when he was drafted by Detroit, this secondary, man, just from the corner spots could be great. Clark Phillips has played great in camp. He has been competing. He's a dog. He has been out there fighting with the receivers, man. Like, and that's why people thought he was a steal in the 4th round for the Falcons. Like, the way he is, man, he has the potential to be really, really good at that nickel if he wins that job. And then obviously Mike Hughes, veteran guy, been here, done that, could get that spot as well. D. Alford, he's competing. You know, we know his story. He's a guy that a lot of people think should make the team. We'll see. Like I said, there's a lot of competition there. So someone's not making the team. People are probably thinking Darren Hall and Cornell will be the guys odd man out. But Cornell apparently in the camp has also improved a little bit. Darren Hall, you know, he's done what he can. So there's going to be a lot of competition in that corner position. But luckily, Jeff Okudah will be back at some point early in the regular season. So hopefully he's not out too long. But like I said, this is a great opportunity for those guys to take advantage of those extra reps and really kind of solidify themselves firmly on this team in the 53-man roster. And then we get to the safeties. I mean, there's not really much to say. Bates has been solid. I mean, Bates does what he do. I mean, I expect him to be the leader of that secondary and really, you know, lead the young guys, young talented guys, into what they want to consider the no-fly zone in Atlanta, or I like to say no-fly zone down south. Grant, he's been solid. I expect him to be really good. Javon Hawkins, man, he's been really good. He's a guy who I think people were wondering what is his role this year with the team. And I said to him, he is a ball hawk. That's like his strength. That's like what we know him for, as a ball hawk. And I think with this system, with him not being the primary free or strong safety, when they go to maybe a 3 safety look, that can let Hawkins be more of a ball hawk, so to say. He can kind of roam. I like to call him a roamer, a guy who could just attack ball. He doesn't have to worry about, okay, I got to play this zone. Got to make sure I cover my zone, but I also see this, and, you know, make decisions that you got to do in the secondary. He can pretty much maybe play with more looseness. He's played pretty well one-on-ones in camp that I've seen videos of. You know, he's a guy who I think he's picked off a couple of passes. Like, I think he will be a very valuable part even as a 3rd safety this year. He definitely is a guy who, you know, could be impactful for this team, even not even as a starter. So I think that's huge. So just really looking forward to him and just that entire secondary as a whole, because there's very strong expectations there. But overall, through camp so far, I mean, there's been a lot of good things that came out of camp. Felipe Franks is on the IR, so I'm assuming some people are happy about that. I mean, I'm not going to be celebrating a guy's injury, but, you know, I know people have been wondering about the Felipe Franks experiment. You know, a lot of the guys that have been hurt have been guys who have been bubble players, so they haven't had a major injury. I mean, we thought maybe Okudah, but that he looks like he'll be fine. So we haven't had like a super major injury yet on this team, so that's been good to not have to, you know, deal with that right now. But overall, man, I think the Falcons are headed in the right direction. They've fully told people what their expectations are. They fully expect to be a playoff team, and they expect to be competing in the playoffs. Obviously, a lot of people are going to question, it's just Desmond. Is Desmond ready to take that next step? Is Desmond going to take that next step? That's going to be the biggest thing that I think people are going to wonder about. And we'll continue to look at his development. I'll continue to see how he continues to play, like I said, against scrimmage against Miami, and then the preseason games. Because I think that's where he's probably going to play the most, is like scrimmage. He's not probably going to play in that first preseason. That second preseason game, then yeah. But we'll continue to look at his progress. We'll continue to look at everybody's progress. We'll continue to look closely at the position battles to see potentially who could make it. If there's any question that you guys have about camp, or anybody I didn't touch on that you want to give me, you want me to give an answer, an opinion on, just drop it in the comment down below. Also, don't forget to subscribe, like, share the video, share this with other Falcons fans. You know, really build up that Falcon network here, and just continue to do it. Like I said, shout out to, you know, Falcoholic Kevin, Say Which Way, Daniel Flick, all of them. Just great coverage for the Falcons so far, and helping me, obviously not being able to be there, able to know what's still going on like I am there. So big shout out to those guys. And overall, just everybody who covers the team in general. So excited to see what this team looks like as we get into the first preseason game next week. And then we'll continue to update from there. Hopefully continue to see good things, and hopefully nobody gets seriously hurt. So that's all I got for you guys. Your boy Bryce Lewis. We'll see you next time.